This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Earl.
Take off that tie.
You know, I'm willing to take direction. My name's Earl, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm an addict. That means I put $2 in the basket. I'd like to thank Richard for asking me to come out tonight. And thank you, Matt, for leading. And welcome to the new people. I think there were like 15 people that came up and took welcome chips. We're glad you're here tonight. Congratulations to the other chip takers, and happy birthday. That first year, that's pretty important. That's a big deal. Congratulations. And Vivian, 5. It's a half a decade. You're well on your way. And Flo, wow. Thank you for leading the path for me. You know, my sobriety date is October the 16th, 1987. And my home group is the Dunsmore group up in La Crescenta. And this is not a glum lot. You guys have a good time out here. You know, I was impressed. I was impressed. It kind of reminded me of some crazy stag meetings that I went to early in my sobriety. But you're having a good time, and you know, you're supposed to be happy, joyous, and free. You know, and in the face of tragedy, we you know, it's like gallows humor around here. You know, we came here on our last dying leg, and the program has, and God has breathed new life into us, and I'm so grateful to a power in my life today that keeps me sober on a daily basis. And my step 11 today is basically, you know, trying to become better friends with my best friend, and that's God. You know, when I got into these rooms, I carried with me a concept of religions, and you know, and then if there was a God, you know, I was in trouble because of the guilt and the upbringing that I got when I went to Sunday school and so forth. So for me, I'm so happy to be here tonight. You know, I started drinking and experimenting with drugs at an early age. But long before I took that first drink, I did not fit comfortably into my own skin. I was in a dysfunctional family. I was probably the center of the dysfunction most of the time. I had a younger sister 5 years and an older brother 5 years, and we all had different fathers and the same mother, and due to death and divorce and so forth. And it was kind of a weird situation to be in. And I was always small for my age, so I was always compensating for my size. And I would be boisterous and loud and bragging, and I was always trying to gain approval from my peers and my parents. And it was very uncomfortable. So when I finally got to junior high, I started, for the same reason I think almost everybody does. There's two factors: curiosity and peer pressure. You know, I wanted you to like me, I wanted to fit in, I wanted to be part of the in crowd. They're over there drinking, smoking funny rolled cigarettes, laughing, having a good time. I wonder what that feels like. Now, I've also come to believe over the last 21 years or so that there's two types of people. There's normies and there's alcoholics and addicts. Now, there may be more, but for me, that's kind of how I view it. Now, normies, they succumb to that peer pressure and that curiosity, and they try that. And the next day, they kind of shake their head. They go, wow, that was fun. But then they go back to their school, or they go back to their jobs, or they go back to their lives, and it's a take it or leave it proposition. People like myself, all of a sudden, this feeling that I get, and I drank and I used for the effect, all of a sudden made everything okay. All those feelings of not being good enough, or tall enough, or smart enough, or funny enough, they all went away. And I had lots of confidence. And I had lots of fun. And when I come to the next day, I immediately want to start off where we left off when I passed out. Let's go get some more of whatever it was. And that's the big difference. And I had the love of partying from the very beginning. I liked what it did for me. And in the beginning, it was a lot of fun and just a little bit of trouble. Now, I grew up in the 60s, and back in the 60s, there was a music revolution going on, and a political revolution going on, and a sexual revolution going on, and boy, I wanted to be a part of it. And and I had a good time. I had a great time. And, I remember taking psychedelics in Griffith Park and getting naked, and they used to have these, we called them love-ins. And, wow, it was wide open. It was wide open and a lot of fun. And, I kind of like, I don't know whether I crossed over the line or I snorted the line. But I got to the point where drugs and alcohol was the answer, and problems and issues and conflict, normal people would deal with those things. I would rather get loaded than deal with all that. Choose a college, choose a career, choose a path. No, thank you. We're going to party. And consequently, I went down the wrong path. And by the time I was 21 years of age, I had been arrested over 5 times, all behind drugs and alcohol. I had been arrested for inciting to riot, being present where marijuana was being smoked, grand theft auto, possession of heroin, possession of an explosive device. Whoa! I took way too much LSD. Way too much. And as a consequence, the last time I was arrested, I could not deal with a public defender. I could not deal or comprehend the predicament that I was in. I was a political prisoner. There was no way that I was going to go up against the conspiracy. The judge, the DA, the public defender, the jurors, they're all on the County of Los Angeles payroll. What chance did I have? And I kind of fell into a psychosis at that time. And they didn't know what to do with me. So back in those days, the judge had the ability to sentence you on a 1370 commitment, which means it's indeterminate observation. And they were going to observe me. And they sent me to a Atascadero State Mental Hospital for observation. And I remember vaguely arriving there and going into the reception area and getting off the bus. And I announced to them that I was the second coming of Christ. At which time they slammed me to the ground, they pulled down my pants, and they started giving me injections of stelazine and thorazine and marazine and other great drugs. They kind of put me in la-la land so they could deal with me. I was put into the padded cell with 4-point leather restraints. And that's what my life had become at 21 years of age. And just prior to going into there, I should remind you that I was homeless. My family wanted nothing to do with me, etc., etc. So here I am. I had arrived. Here's a kid who can't handle his LSD, and I'm locked up with Tex Watson. I'm locked up with mentally disturbed sex offenders, serial rapists, child molesters, and juvenile serial murderers. I had arrived. You know, we can look back, and I can look back today and I can laugh at that, but when I was going through it, it was hell. And there were some things that happened to me while I was locked up that weren't pretty, and they weren't nice. And there are some things that go on in those institutions that are evil. So, fortunately, they started to lower my medication, and I eventually was introduced to group therapy, and a psychiatric technician befriended me, and he took me aside one day and he says, you know, if you ever want to get out of here, you're going to have to tell those psychiatrists anything they want to hear. And I said, okay. And so I took a little bit of direction. And while I was locked up there, I went to my first 12-step meeting. They had an NA meeting at that hospital, and I learned to drink coffee. Wow. You have a little coffee and a little Thorazine? That's cool. I kept coming back to those meetings. Boy, I wish I'd gotten sober then, but unfortunately I didn't. But I did get a little bit better. I did get better. And in 6 months I went back before the judge, and he looked at my record, and he said, I'm going to assign you to 3 years probation, which is what I probably would have gotten if I had simply cooperated in the first place. But, the disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. And I had come to this epiphany while I was locked up there, and the fog was lifting a little bit, and I said, you know what? I want to go out and I want to get that white picket fence house and that good job and the right woman and the right golden retriever and the shiny pickup truck and all the toys, and everything's going to be okay. And I'll just drink beer and smoke dope like God intended, and I'll be okay. I'll leave those psychedelics alone. And so I started out on a path of controlling and enjoying my substances. And I achieved most of those goals, those material goals. However, I was unable to establish an intimate relationship with another human being because I have the disease. And the disease keeps me from becoming intimate with that other human being because I have another priority. And that other priority is to alter my state of consciousness. That comes first. And so consequently, the material success came, and I got the great job, and I got the stuff, but I still wasn't okay inside. I still had that feeling that I wasn't good enough. And it was kind of weird, and I went through 2 marriages, one that lasted 11 months. It was more like a blackout. And then the other one was a serious attempt. I was in love with this gal. She was my high school sweetheart, and I had ran into her at our 5-year high school reunion. And we married, and we had a son. And about 2 years later, she discovers that I'm growing marijuana in the garage with fluorescent lights. And she was really down on that. she didn't think that was the way a responsible young father should be behaving. And then she came and she said to me, you know, I've never really have been in love with you. I'm still in love with my other high school sweetheart. And would you please move out? And that was tough because I really liked being a dad and coming home to my son and playing with him. And I was pretty responsible. The bills got paid. I didn't stay out all night. I came home after work. And so it was real tough. And back in those days, when you got a divorce, unless the mother was really, 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 really evil and you could prove it, you got child support payments and she got custody. And so I became a dad every other weekend for 48 hours. I made child support payments. And I didn't deal with that emotionally very well. And so what I did, because I had all this extra time on my hands, I partied. And back then, I got another promotion at work, and I was in downtown LA, and I was introduced to my dealer. And there was this miracle drug going around at the time called cocaine. And I say that it was a miracle drug because you could just do a few lines of this, and you could drink longer, okay? Really good. You could drink longer. And after a couple of minutes, you became an expert in all sorts of topics and fields. You could talk hours and hours on the subject, not having any previous education on the subject whatsoever. And then the real miracle was you never went home alone. You always had friends. And and in the beginning, it was a lot of fun and just a little bit of trouble. Boy, I was smart. But then one day I was up at my dealer's house in the Hollywood Hills, and he had this funny glass pipe, and he was breaking this thing up that looked like a macadamia nut, you know, and putting it in. Cents a million, yes. What's a macadamia nut doing in there? And after badgering him for several minutes and him telling me, no, you don't want to try this, I tried it, and I had arrived at exactly where I'd always wanted to be my entire life for about 5 seconds. And then I spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars trying to replicate that moment without much success. And, a few years later, I'm in trouble. I'm in real trouble because it was insidious. And, I finally had a little bit of willingness, and I had run out of lies, and my health was suffering, and I had remarried. I had taken a new hostage. She had 2 sons, and I thought that, that would make me more responsible and settle down, but, I had the obsession, and I could not drink, and I could not stop using cocaine. And so I went into a 28-day treatment program. And I got in there, and, I was going to get the heat off, because the boss was a little upset with me. And my work had been suffering a little bit, and the kids were hiding from me, and the wife wasn't speaking to me. And, I needed to get the heat off, and so I went into treatment. But then, they started talking about God, and they started talking about these steps, and I looked at those steps, and I thought, I might do 4 or 5, but the rest of them don't apply. And I have the symptom of denial very strongly. I had the symptom of denial because I didn't have to drink in the morning to stop shaking, you know. I was always drinking, but I wasn't physically addicted to alcohol at that point. So I, of course, wasn't an alcoholic. And I, you know, I'd grown lots of nice marijuana and smoked it and thought that it was a perfectly natural herb. And I mean, I can do that. And from the very beginning, it was all about self. And it was all about how I'm different and how I'm too cool for Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I'm too hip, slick, and cool to do that. And I'm not that bad, and there's all these differences. When the truth is you know, that I'm dying inside. And for the first 18 months out of treatment, I was going to meetings, I was taking chips, and I was having a Henry Weinhard on the side once in a while and not telling you about it. And I was smoking a joint once in a while and not telling you about it. And I was miserable because all these other people in the meetings were doing the real deal. They were taking the real chips, and their lives were changing, and they were working steps and working with sponsors, and their lives were improving. And I was miserable because I couldn't really drink and use how I wanted to, and I wasn't sober, and I didn't have a connection with a higher power. And so after about 18 months, it got painful enough for me to walk into a meeting and say, I'm Earl, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a liar, and that cake I took last October wasn't for real, or last February. My first sobriety date was in February. And they all kind of laughed and said, yeah, we know. And then they made me secretary of the Tuesday night meeting. And they said, you know, welcome. And, you know, I finally waved the white flag and I surrendered. And I got honest, and I started on the steps, and I started working the principles behind the steps, and slowly but surely incorporate them into my life. And it was tough in the beginning because I'm so full of self, and I'm so full of my great thinking and my great ideas of 37 years that it's very difficult for me to try it somebody else's way. You know, that was very tough. That went against all of my training and upbringing as a child and a young adult, to be independent, self-sufficient, and, you know, have some willpower. And you were telling me you're powerless. You need to turn your will and your life over to a power that you may not understand. And like Flo said earlier, you know, I just had to get willing and agree to do these things, even though I didn't think that they would work for me because I am so different. But slowly but surely, you know, I didn't notice it at first, but other people did. They noticed a change in me, slowly but surely. And I took direction, you know. I got an H&I panel right away, and I still have that same H&I panel. And I love it. Last Wednesday, we went on that panel, and I took a gal with 90 days. And the people at that facility could really relate to this 90-day wonder, and she is a wonder. She's a miracle. Kind of hard to relate to us folks that have some time, because first off, nobody in the room believes that anybody could be sober that long. Maybe 30 days, maybe 90 days is a little more believable. But, you know, the thing of it is, it's just having to try it somebody else's way for me. You know, I had to get a sponsor. I got a great sponsor. Unfortunately, my sponsor relapsed. And then I had to get a new sponsor. And I've had the same sponsor for the last 14 years. And he's got 31 years today. and he is the big brother that I never had. And today I sponsor about 16, 17 guys, and they range from 20 years. The guy with 20 years I was sponsoring at 1 year, and all in between, down to a guy with just about 4 months right now. And that's the miracle of this program, is that it's one alcoholic addict working with another. You know, that's how I cannot do this thing by myself. You know, it's a we program. The very first word and the very first step is we. And, you know, that was my problem, because for 37 years it was I, me, you know, I'll handle it. I know what's best for me. And today, and I had a real tough problem with this God concept early on, because of all of my prejudice against organized religion. And today I can tell you that I have a God of my own understanding, and He is my best friend. And this is a power greater than myself that keeps me sober on a daily basis, just for today. That's what we do. We just do today. Now, I wish I could tell you that in the last 21 years that they rolled out the red carpet for me and put rose petals alongside the red carpet, and that life was just fantastic. The truth of the matter is that life happens. Good stuff is going to happen and bad stuff is going to happen whether you're drunk or sober, and you're going to need to deal with it. Fortunately, these steps up on the wall give us the tools to deal with that. And the fact that we're in a fellowship and we don't have to deal with any of the tragedy or any of the joy by ourselves. We get to share that. You know, we get to tap into this power that I call God, that's in the rooms, as good orderly direction. You know, I've heard that. I've been around. But I got to tell you, you make a commitment to you don't drink or use no matter what. And there have been a lot of no matter what's in my life. You know, at 8 years of sobriety, I had an 18-year-old son commit suicide. And that was the most painful thing that I have ever experienced in my life. And the fellowship carried me through that period of time in my life and put me in touch with a grief recovery counselor who was also in the program. And, you know, he talked with me for about 2 hours the day after my son killed himself. And he walked me off the edge of the cliff, because I was, you know, I was ready to give up. You know, I was angry at God, and, you know, what's the use? You know, here I was, 8 years clean and sober. I was sponsoring guys. I had commitments. You know, I was doing the right thing. You know, how could you do this to me? And it turned out that, you know, He didn't do it to me. And after doing a lot of work, you know, I had to come to grips with the fact and the acceptance that it was between my son and his higher power, and it really had very little to do with me. I did the very best job I could with that boy, and I had made my amends, and I was there for him. And we had a good relationship. He made a mistake, and I've had to forgive him for that. Can't undo it. 12 years sobriety, I lose that great job that I got, and had to face and walk through that fear. And 2 years after that, the 20-year marriage that I was in, you know, couldn't be repaired. And there I was, you know, 52 years old, and balding, and nobody's ever going to love me again. And, oh. and full of fear. And, I had to, one more time, I had to just trust in God. And God closes a door and he opens another door. And we have to be willing and open-minded and ready for that, I was in a sick marriage. Today, I'm in a very healthy marriage with a much younger, prettier, she has a power of her own understanding, and it's not me. She's healthy, and we're living happily ever after, a day at a time. I never thought that would happen for me. I lost that great job. I started a company. It pays the bills. I'm my own boss, and I'm grateful for that. I'd like to just leave you with a couple of things that have worked for me over the years, and that is my experience and my lessons have taught me that if I'm in fear, I'm not in faith. Okay? And I need to constantly be moving out of those fearful situations and having faith in the creator of the universe, my best friend, this close power that keeps me sober on a daily basis, will solve any of my problems as long as I'm willing to present those problems to my creator. I have to move out of dishonesty and into honesty. And I'm not talking about the cash register. I'm talking about stopping the lying to myself. Because sometimes I will say, well, it's not that bad, or it really doesn't bother me. And the truth of the matter is that I need to be writing and I need to be looking at my part in it. And I need to get honest. And I need to embrace my character defects. The other thing is that I have to be constantly aware of falling into self-pity, because I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And I'll wake up in the morning, and if I'm not quite right, I will turn and I will say, God, where's mine? And, self-pity will get you into a lot of trouble. Eventually, I've heard the saying, pour me another drink. Draw me another line. I'm dead tomorrow. So what do I do about that self-pity? Well, the spiritual solution to that is gratitude. I can't be in self-pity and gratitude at the same time. And my sponsor taught me that there are a lot of things that I can be grateful for, and he's given me assignments of making gratitude lists, especially when I'm down and things aren't going the way I think they should. And of course, that last fundamental movement of moving from resentment and into acceptance, and that doesn't mean that I have to approve or co-sign the conditions of what I see in front of me. It just means that I have to accept and be real honest and truthful about what the situation is and look at my part in it. And if it involves another individual, I need to pray for them. And that is how I have found it to give me this little thing that they call serenity. Sometimes it's fleeting. It's not always there. But I have moments now where I'm okay. I'm okay with unresolved conflict. We don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree. But I don't have to stick pins in a doll and drive by your house at night and throw gasoline bottles against the front window. I can look at my part, and I always have to move out of resentment and into acceptance. I'd like to thank everybody here tonight for listening to me. I hope you got something out of it. I know I did. Thank you much.